Good morning, nerds. It is I. Now, I'm in a bit of a pickle this week. As you can probably tell from my voice, I am currently sick, and so my ability to concentrate on writing a script has been, non-existent. So, what we'll be doing this week, I'm going to ramble about a topic that has stuck itself in my head and is refusing to leave, and that is the topic of morality. We're going to explore a theory called moral foundations theory, which came out of the field of psychology in the last 20 years or so, that I think is actually a fairly good way for game masters and players to better frame morality, both in terms of world building and in terms of how you think about the beliefs of your player characters. I will go through each of these 6 moral foundations in turn, how they work, and how they can be used to make your tabletop RPG campaigns more complex. So, if you would like to follow the right and noble path of the moral foundation, sit down, buckle up, and prepare to go beyond good and evil. Please hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications, as this will guarantee your entry into heaven. Entry to heaven not guaranteed. So, the moral foundation system. There are 6 of them, and they are fairness, care, liberty, authority, purity, and loyalty. Okay, let's go through these very quickly. Fairness. The belief that people should be rewarded proportionally for how good they are, how productive they are, how whatever they are. Having this foundation can lead to a strong sense of justice, while not having it can mean that you are more than willing to cheat to get ahead. Care is all about preventing harm and being good to others in that way. People with strong care foundations will be all about health and safety, potentially redressing past wrongs, and all of that stuff. While I do believe that the best way to describe someone lacking in the care foundation is this quote by General George S. Patton: "May God have mercy on my enemies, because I sure as hell won't." Suffice it to say that detractors of the care foundation and detractors of the Geneva Convention are basically the same thing. Moving on, we have the Liberty Foundation, and this one is self-explanatory. The belief that you should be able to do whatever you want without others trying to control your behavior. Proponents of this moral foundation are the classic type to smoke weed and shoot celebratory gunfire at their mixed-race friend's gay wedding, and detractors tend to be these sorts of moral busybodies who try to control what everybody else does. Then we come to the Authority Moral Foundation, and no, these two are not mutually exclusive. Authority foundation comes down to respecting instructions, respecting authority figures, and symbols of authority. Proponents of the authority foundation aren't necessarily authoritarian, but they certainly are very deferential and very big fans of hierarchy. Detractors tend to be the classic rebel types, breaking all of the rules and having all the fun. But speaking of getting in trouble for having fun, the Purity Foundation. The Purity Foundation is all about restricting things that are considered unhygienic, unhealthy, addictive, sexually immoral. Expressions of the Purity Foundation can range from everything from no shoes in the house, to no sex before marriage, to drink responsibly. And detractors tend to fall into the much more loosey-goosey camp, shall we say. Finally, the Loyalty Foundation. This is all about not betraying your friends, your country, your community, all of that stuff. As such, those who are strong in the Loyalty Foundation will be very dedicated to their friends, very reciprocal people, and just all around nice to be with, while those who lack the Loyalty Foundation tend to be much more mercenary in their dealings. So, now that we have covered these, I think it's worth exploring how they can be used. For one thing, I think it's important not to project your own moral foundations onto your world building. Most people in the modern day tend to be very strong in the fairness, liberty and care foundations, a product of, at least in the West, being from a weird society. Western, educated, industrialized, rational and democratic. Tend to value rationality as the ultimate moral good, which inevitably leads to the idea that if we just argue back and forth about the trolley problem long enough, we'll eventually find a solution. I can only imagine that by now, hundreds, if not thousands, of rail workers have been run over by rampant trolley cars due to very, very indecisive drivers, worried about the fact that no matter what they do, someone will have a moral argument to bludgeon them over the head with. So yeah, as you can see, I don't like the trolley car problem, I don't like how we do modern philosophy, but I think that is a bit beside the point. The real point here is that when you project your own morality, you kind of end up with your own culture, but maybe slightly more monarchical and in slightly oldie-timey clothes. Throughout our history, we have massively changed our social attitudes on a number of phenomena, from gender equality to treatment of foreigners to to the best way to get rid of waste. Yes, that is a moral issue. It comes under the Purity Foundation. In the West, our attitude to, say, the lower classes has changed massively. In previous epochs, when we actually had a much stronger authority moral foundation, the idea of a lord oppressing their serfs was actually pretty normal and pretty rational. After all, you wouldn't want the chaos and disorder that comes from rebellion, so maybe a little oppression isn't such a bad thing. Please God, nobody take that out of context. Anyway, this also leads, I think, to a phenomenon where game masters and world builders will try to deal with topics like authoritarianism, monarchy, feudalism, and being somewhat afraid of violating their own moral foundations, they will either water them down or completely misunderstand their intent. If you actually want to explore worlds beyond your own, metropolitan 21st century life, you do have to consider that people in very different cultures will think differently from you, and this is a good framework to understand it. As I said, throughout much of history, the idea that you might want to actively curtail people's freedoms for the sake of law and order, freedom of speech, freedom to marry whoever you want, freedom to own and trade your own labor as you see fit, are all things that can be easily taken away. Likewise, in a society with a lot of magic, and potentially access to necromancy, the Moral Purity Foundation might be very contentious. Whether you can engage in necromancy, handling corpses, raising the dead, is something that would almost certainly be frowned down upon, one because spending time around corpses leads to the spread of disease, but it's also something that would be routinely argued. The labor-saving benefits of having tireless, painless corpses do all of the most difficult jobs in society would be immense, and that would be a source of conflict. You need to be able to effectively articulate the views of both sides. You need to understand why someone would oppose necromancy, why someone would support it. And so when you start to break out of your own moral framework, you can be more creative in what you do. I also think that being more broad in your moral approach can help with making better evil characters. Evil characters and morality have long been a sticking point for everybody from writers to game masters to political pundits. Nobody seems to be able to get it right. And the issue is either we assume that evil people are totally immoral, that they have no justification for what they're doing because we can't see a justification, and if we can't see a justification, then there is no justification. Or they go the other way. People will construe vast leaps of logic, constructing complex moral systems to the point where they start to sell themselves on the idea of evil. This idea that, everyone really is just a hero of their own story. I take a third view, that evil arises when we warp our moral perceptions beyond the limits of normalcy. This can range from the mundane of, oh, I cheated on my partner, but in my defense they stole from me first. I wouldn't call that a particularly good moral justification, but I have seen that justification used before, fortunately not on me, but, it is in circulation. Likewise, the evil necromancer might just think that people are too sensitive, they're being too puritanical, and they just can't see the benefits of killing thousands and thousands of people and turning them into corpses where they can be much more efficiently used. Besides, they're undesirables, they're alcoholics, they're lazy. They can do so much more good as dead automata than they can as anarchic, living idiots. And to an extent, this is the idea supported by Moral Foundations theory. I don't want to go putting words in Jonathan Haidt's mouth, he is the guy who came up with this, but from having read his stuff, the origin of morality is a post hoc rationalization for our instinctive likes and dislikes. And if you have abnormal likes and dislikes, then you will necessarily have abnormal post hoc rationalizations. At least, that's my headcanon. I'm a game master, not a psychologist. I can do what I want. I'd also like to kind of spare a moment for players. A lot of RPG advice tends to focus on GMs, so let's have a word for players. The default morality system that is sometimes imposed on players, especially in D&D, is the alignment system. Good, evil, lawful, chaotic, neutral. And I and many others out there are not huge fans of it. It's as inaccurate as it is reductionist. Evil people are not evil for the sake of being evil, and even good people may have ulterior motives for kindness and good deeds. One perk of working at a charity is they sometimes have pretty good paychecks. You're still working at a charity, you're still doing good, but you are doing it for the money. And so my challenge to any players watching this video is to consider the moral foundations of a character that you play. You have a lot of time and space to think about this, more than a GM has to, think about the individual moral systems of dozens and dozens of NPCs. What do they find moral? What do they find immoral? and what causes them to think that, what other rationalizations they lean on. This might just be your own morality, but you can always go a level deeper. You can consider other perspectives. I am something of a loyal person. I try to stick by my friends as much as they stick by me, and I really don't like it when other people are in any way deceitful or treacherous. So the next time I play a new character, when I actually get to be a player again, as I haven't been one all year, you know what? It might do me some good to play someone with a bit more of a mercenary outlook. Likewise, I really don't like authority that much. I just don't. I have never got on with it. So, again, by that same token, probably do me some good to play someone who's quite comfortable in hierarchy, who's comfortable saying, okay, I don't like your decision, but because you're the boss, I will go with it. Those are words that have almost never left my mouth, but maybe they should. Maybe I should, expand my perspectives. I guess my big conclusion for this whole video is that you should think outside of your own box. There are a lot of YouTube channels and a lot of blogs and a lot of other things in the game mastering world that will give you all sorts of ways to think laterally about technology, magic, enemy tactics, to get you to think differently and to use the tools that you have at your disposal. But when it comes to morality, we tend to get awkward. We tend to say, oh well, we live in an egalitarian society and we can't really not be egalitarian. We think xenophobia is bad, so we can't really depict anyone who thinks xenophobia is good. And so my message here is to break out of that mindset. This is fantasy. It is not real life. You can be more flexible. You can question some of the norms that you would consider. Aristotle once said that it's the mark of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. And that is the mindset that I would advise you to go into with morality in fantasy settings. You may end up in a situation where characters believe things that you find immoral, and that's okay. Entertain the ideas. Give them a moderately reasonable argument, or an utterly warped one, if that'd be more appropriate. I would say, for instance, there are not many reasonable arguments for slavery, so you may have to go all the way back to the final car on the crazy train, but you should be willing to confront these things. This isn't really meant to be an exercise in changing your beliefs in some way. Quite the opposite. If you have a moral conviction, whatever it may be, stick by it. But you should always be able to understand why others might disagree with you. And in tabletop RPGs with an imaginary world, imaginary characters, imaginary circumstances, you have all the tools that you need to work through an interesting, complex, deep hypothetical and to understand things from a different perspective, even if you never end up agreeing with it. My message is not to embrace necromantic fascism. It's not to embrace some puritanical view of what sort of behavior is and isn't acceptable in a religious building. It's to consider how people came to those views and what that says about them. That's it. And it's a wrap. This was, I think, a bit of a shorter video and a bit of a messy, rambly video. As said, I am a bit sick. My brain is not 100% at the moment, but I do hope you enjoyed this video regardless. This video was inspired by the works of the American psychologist Dr. Jonathan Haidt and his book The Writer's Mind. If discussions of morality, politics, and culture are interesting to you, then I suggest you pick up the book at one of the links below. It's not an affiliate link, it's just a book that I like, and I suggest that you read it. And please leave a like, share it with your friends, and leave a comment down below. What are some interesting moral quandaries you come upon at the table? Let me know in the comments, and let's get some discussion going. If you'd like to see more videos like this, hopefully with better scripting and more coherence, then please hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. As you can see, I'm determined to keep my weekly schedule up no matter what, so there will be another video next week. Hopefully I'll be over this flu or this COVID or whatever this is, I have no idea. It's mostly gone, but not gone enough. So yeah, another video next week. Hopefully it will be better than this one. In the meantime, I'm off to go take a paracetamol and probably take a nap as well. So once more, thank you all so much for watching, and until I see you next, farewell. And believe that if we just keep arguing then please hit the